Welcome to the channel if it's the first time you're here. This is Chris, your friendly neighbourhood buyer's agent. And today we're on focus or on point, talk about buying a property in Sydney. Now, if you're a first home buyer or you're a baby boomer and you're downsizing, all of this is still going to be highly relevant for you. We know that buying a property, particularly in Sydney, where the median house price is 1.5 million, is daunting. It's a big purchase, and things like stamp duty make it very difficult to get in or get out of a bad deal. So let's avoid those bad deals. Today we're focusing on three areas. Number one, we're going to focus on the pre-look, then we're going to look at inspections, and then we're going to look at negotiate. All right, come with me on this journey. So pre-look, what are we talking about there? Well, we know that most buyers spend anywhere between 18 months to 2 years before they even put an offer on any property at all. So pre-look is included in this. Not from when you start inspecting, but basically the thought process and what you're thinking about the property. A lot of hesitations. We see newspaper reports, the media loves to beat up how bad or how good the market is. It affects people. It affects people about when they want to buy. By the time they get in, quite often they comment, I wish I'd done this 12 months ago. So pre-look, what are we talking about there? Number one, get your finances in order. Involve a strategic mortgage broker to determine what the loan is for you. Understand or show them, do you have any other properties? Are you going to buy future properties? Is this an own house? Is this investment? Plan to have kids? What in the next 30 years? Roughly look for you. That allows them to choose the best option with a lot of flexibility or stability depending on what your needs are. Also, just quickly think about your spend habits. If you've got a lot of subscriptions, Amazon or online channels, probably a good chance to just stop those or pause those for 3 months leading up to it, because your bank will look at your current spend habits in your bank statements to determine what you can loan and your capacity to pay back any loan. Once you have that in together, you're going to also think about, okay, with that money, I've got to pay stamp duty, I've got to pay a solicitor, and potentially got to pay building inspectors, and maybe even a buyer's agent as well. So you need to factor all those things in to understand what your true borrowing capacity or buying power is. Also, I always recommend people take a little bit off. So they've been given, let's say, $1 million to buy, I'd be buying somewhere around the $800,000 market. So it's going to make your repayments better, it's going to allow you to be more comfortable. And as and when ready, if you want to do something with that property in terms of equity, you're going to be able to do something far faster in that way. But everyone's got their own risk appetite. Next, in terms of pre-look, is assessing the market. I'm not talking about going out and inspecting. That comes next. I'm talking about using tools at your disposal. So two ones I'd use is realestate.com and Google Maps. Realestate.com, number one, go on there, you can see what's for sale, you can see what's renting, you can see even agents that are selling in certain areas. And there's also another tab that talks about sold. You can put in your criteria for what you're looking to buy and actually assess what's sold the last 3 months that has matched that criteria. If more than 50% of what's been listed the last 3 months that have sold is in your budget area and you're comfortable with those, you can basically say, I know my criteria is good and valid. If it's less than, say, 10%, you're fraught with danger. You've got slim pickings and you're really trying to pick the eyes out of something that may or may not exist. So you either got to have patience or you got to change your brief. And if you've got much more, if 100% was in the market you would buy, you'd probably be guessing you're an investor. From there, you have your finances order, you've done your pre-look, you're feeling comfortable, we go into the inspect phase. In the inspect phase, we're really going to refine that criteria. So initially you might have said, well, I want 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, 1 car park in a particular suburb for this much money. But now you're going to go through into far more details. I want you to think about, does school matter? Does transportation matter? Do amenities matter to you? What are the key things? Are you looking at childcares? Are you looking at the work? Are you looking at demographics? Are you looking at the socio-economic status of the suburb or neighbouring areas? You're looking at infrastructure. Is there infrastructure occurring that is building that could be really positive? Has there been infrastructure built that is negative? Able to understand all those elements to then write down all of them, either on a piece of paper, Excel, there's some apps out there, and then break them down to must-haves and nice-to-haves. Right? Have these so they're flexible. If you're buying with a partner, the two of you should write down everything you want. I suggest then walk away, each you put down write them into must-haves and nice-to-haves, then get back together and share your notes. You'll be surprised. I've had many times where the partner's actually thinking about more about their partner in that scenario than themselves and being able to come to a really good compromise. This is a really delicate thing you're going to be buying, and it's going to cost you a lot of money. The less stress you can have and the better on page, the better. If you're buying by yourself, Still do the same process, write down the categories, put it as must have and nice to have, but find somebody else. Is it a family member? Is it a friend? Is it a strategic mortgage broker? Is it a buyer's agent? You might have a real estate agent that you know and trust, maybe from your network. You're not going to buy from them in this transaction, but you know of them. Bounce off that idea with somebody else. Make sure that they also feel like it is reasonable, that you can expect to get something, and get them to challenge. You might have written down, I would love transportation, a train station less than 10 minutes. But realistically, with your budget, it's probably going to be 15 to 20 minutes. Is that okay or not? It's up to you. Then, when you go to inspection, you might have looked at 5 properties, 10 properties, 20 properties online. And typically, like Wednesday afternoon, could be Thursday, but more likely Saturday, you need to go to inspect the property. My advice is, if you want this to happen, clear your diary for the next 5 to 6 weekends. Make sure you've got nothing on that is either going to be interruptive, or make sure you're not going away at all. If you really want to buy a property, you've got to treat it like a full-time job and not be distracted. You can't have 1 week off, because that right property might come up and be gone, and that whole 2 weeks either side of that is now wasted. When you get to inspection, because you're dedicated and you're making your focus, get there early. Now, I know this is hard to do when you've got multiple inspections. Trust me, I know that. But if you can, get there 10, 15, 20 minutes early. Why? Well, it's not to impress the agent. It's actually just to assess the suburb, the street, get comfortable with it. Also, really easy tip here, you might see some neighbours walking the dogs or out and about. Ask them, do you live here? Do you rent? What's the community feel like? Do they regret themselves buying here? What do they think about this property? Do they know the owners? Might seem like snooping, but in the end, you're just finding out some friendly information about what's going on. In the end, if you move in, they're going to be welcoming you as a neighbour at some point in time. When you enter the inspection, you'll obviously give your phone number and name legally to the agent. You have to do this. That's fine. Agent will quite often ask you as you're coming in or as you're leaving, is this something you can afford, or what do you think the value is? What's your budget, basically? Less you can give, the better. We're going to get to negotiation later on, but less you can give while still remaining friendly with an agent is the right tactic. Ask the agent, or if you already know the guide price, let's say the guide price has been 1.3, just say to them, well, the guide price fits in my budget. I'm happy to continue to be considered it. Or if the agent says it's now 1.3 and that's above your budget, just say to them, look, it's above my budget. Don't need to share the particulars of what your budget is, but you can pull it out or walk away sooner rather than waste your time. I highly recommend that as you go through this process, save every agent you meet, their number and name, and particularly the address you inspected with them on, into your phone. Why? When they call back Monday or Tuesday, even if you're not interested, you can give them, oh, yep, thank you for that. Didn't really like it because the neighbour's tall building is blocking the backyard. But if you find something else similar with no neighbours blocking the backyard, I'd be interested. The agent will love it, because all they're looking for is some minuscule part of feedback to be able to go back to their vendor with. Also, it means, oh, actually, I've got a property 2 doors down that's about to come on that doesn't have that same issue. Would you like to assess and inspect? We hear this term off-market, pre-market. As a buyer's agent, I get a lot of those opportunities. But you can get them too by having this conversation with the agent at the inspection, and afterwards, they are likely to demonstrate to you their off-market opportunities. Now, getting to know every agent in the suburb to do so takes a lifetime, or makes it my full-time job. But while you're doing it, doesn't mean you can't get lucky in part of that process, as long as you've been courteous and following up with them from there. When you're then going to inspect the property and you're walking through the property, we're obviously looking at things, but you have the right to touch and feel as you go through. Now, I'm not talking about gymming off doors or really testing out the strength of something, but you have the right, as long as you're respectful, to look and touch and get an understanding of the property's condition. You might feel some damp, you might see some wood rot, whatever it may be. Be courteous, but don't forget this. I've had time before where I've seen a property where it was styled and there was a big rug in the bedroom, and I just lifted up the rug that had been styled and there was a stain on the floor. Now, is that a reason not to buy it? No. Was it like a whole bottle of red wine that had been spilt there? At least I hope it was red wine. Yes. We didn't end up buying it not for that reason, but if we had, it wouldn't have stopped us. But it was just something I could then report back to my buyer to go, look, this is obviously, it tells you a bit about the condition of the property. You know, that stain might be one thing, but then it might open you up to some other stains or some other areas or issues across the property as well. Now, lastly, in terms of inspect, you have building reports. Now, culturally, it's very much become the norm in the last 20 years that the vendor themselves has a building report completed prior to putting the property up for sale. Why? Well, for the agents have encouraged them to do so because it helps speed up the process of actually selling the property. It's one less speed bump that people potentially have to go through. However, what faith can you put in a building report that a vendor's had completed? Now, I'm not saying you can't have faith in it. For me, I've got the luxury that I know the building inspectors in the area. I've dealt with them, I've communicated with them on previous properties, and there's a far greater level of respect between the two of us for me to have a discussion with them on the report, bring it to life, even have them have a discussion with my potential client or my client to feedback what their thoughts are on the property overall. Now, legally, it is a legal document, but if it is done to the vendor, then it's done for their behalf, right? If you see something, let's say you walk through a property and you notice, and I might notice, some damp smells coming from the bathroom, and that's not put on the report, I'd highly encourage you to get your own done. And you should get one done anyway, but we all know how fast the Sydney market moves, you may not have to. So in essence, general rule of thumb is, if things are written in the report that you expected to be there, great. If something's written in the report that you didn't expect to be there, or you did expect to see there but it wasn't there, those are probably some red flags to look at. Last, we move into negotiate. Now, this can be, as a buyer, I know, one of the most daunting things possible. You've got all the way here, you finally found that property, and you don't want to let it go. Do I have to overpay, though, to secure it because I don't want to start that process all the way again? What I want to say first of all is each agent has their style. We've got access to CoreLogic, Price Finder, and our relationships. We know which agents are more likely to sell pre-auction, at auction, as in go all the way through, off-market, sort of private treaties. We know one which are advantageous to different clauses and terms to be able to work with. You as a buyer, it's hard to know those things. If you can, reach out to people who have purchased from them previously. If you know them in the area, that can also help. Ideally though, if you have a buyer's agent like me, we can unearth and give you all those details. I like to think every agent is like a quarterback in the NFL. They have certain plays they want to run, and if you know that, you can work with them to make those processes happen far smoother and to their liking, which also then can be to your liking. Typically then, in terms of negotiate, there are four main things in the contract you can negotiate on. There's the inclusions, so what's in the property, ovens, pools, curtains, so forth. Deposit, quite often it's written there's 10% deposit. In this day and age, more often than not, you can get it done with 5%. But if you don't agree with that before you purchase, you will be liable to pay 10% of the deposit on the day of purchase, rather than pay that 5% plus the other 90% on the day of settlement. Then we talk about settlement, so settlement day. Now, most contracts have it written 42 days. Sometimes you'll see it's different, where it's written with caveats or it's written as 90 days, whatever it may be. Quite often though, when it's 42 days, it doesn't mean they actually want to sell in 42 days. They've just used a standard contract at the time of drawing it up. Ask the agent, is there any advantageousness to buying this early or to having a longer settlement? The agent then, even though the contract might say 42 days, it might have been written a month ago. And since that time, the vendor has now shared with them, look, we're happy to stick to 42 days of what's in the contract, but if someone offers 90 days, that would be more advantageous for us to allow us time to buy. You also have your own restrictions. I get that. You might be renting, you might have sold, you've got other things at play. So you've got to identify what you can actually negotiate on and understand, but also understand what the vendor will see as potentially attractive. And lastly in the negotiation is the overall offer, the money, ka-ching, how much you're actually paying for it. Now, working with each agent, as I said earlier on, has their own styles. Some will say best and final offer, please present them, and you do so, and then they come back and say, can I have your second best and final? And then your third best and final. And there's other agents out there that will ask you for your best and final, and if you've not paid enough, you won't hear from them again because they've sold it and stayed to their word. Really hard, I understand it. I do sympathise with this, and I've been in your shoes. All I can suggest is get to know the agent really well, get in detail, and I will say, getting a buyer's agent on side, it's going to be less likely you're going to be in the wrong side of the deal than hopefully being on the right side.